everybody? Yes. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you. Nice stage. Guys, happy Anarchapulco. Happy Valentine's Day, too, by the way. I love you all. Look at this. Anarchy is love. This is actually my 5th Anarchapulco. Hold on. I just realized I have a little clicker thingy, and I want to check and see if it's working. Here we go. Hey, look. Hey, it's me. This is my 5th Anarchapulco, and you've probably seen me around because I usually have a camera with me. For the last 5 years, I've been taking photographs of Anarchapulco, and this is the 2nd year that I've been able to speak up on the main stage, and I'm very happy about it. This is me when I was a little kid. I grew up, as he said, I grew up the product of peaceful parenting. I grew up with homeschooling parents. I grew up with parents who were adamant libertarian activists in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The liberty movement was very different in those times. My parents were huge fans of Ayn Rand. They went to see her speak. They were fans of Nathaniel Branden. They used to have Murray Rothbard over for dinner. This is the kind of life I lived. And my parents also cared about the way that we were raised. So I have 2 brothers, and we were raised peacefully. I've never been spanked in my life. My mother taught me that I own myself, that I get to control the decisions in my life, and I got to have an education that I led. And that was wonderful. I love the way I was raised. The other factor, though, is that my parents were also deeply involved in the Libertarian Party. In the early 70s, the Libertarian Party was founded. My parents were co-founders of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and New England chapters as well. My grandfather decided he wanted to run for political office in 1974 as a Republican for Congress, and my mother convinced him to run as a Libertarian instead. And so now 3 generations of my family have been involved with this party. My grandfather, when he was running as a congressional candidate, a young man volunteered on his campaign. That man is my father. Basically, my parents met in the 1974 campaign, got married in 1975, and then they had my brother, whose name is Ragnar, out of the movie Atlas Shrugged. Or not the movie Atlas Shrugged, the book Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, that's the kind of life that I grew up in. Just a couple of years later, 1978, my brother Hagabard was born, and if any of you are like total nerds, you might recognize the Illuminatus trilogy reference in that name. But my family, lots of political engagement, but libertarian political engagement. My parents ran for state rep. They ran for U.S. Congress. My mother ran for governor of New Hampshire like the year before I was born. My dad ran for sheriff, which if you've ever met my father, you would find very, very funny. My family has been deeply ingrained in politics, specifically libertarian politics. In 2003, I got involved in the anti-war movement, and in 2006, I became the youngest vice chair of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. I promise this is not an advertisement for the Libertarian Party. Don't worry, I know we're anarchists. This is just a brief little summary. But what was fun is, so I was vice chair of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, and I went out and collected petitions for candidates, and I helped people run for anything from mayor to state rep to governor, and I worked on numerous presidential campaigns. So in 2004, I worked for Michael Badnarik, who was the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, and in 2008, I worked for a really nice man named Ron Paul, who some of you know, and he will be speaking later this weekend. But Ron Paul is great, but sometimes the best accomplishment as your politician is convincing a bunch of people to become anarchists. Out of curiosity, out of curiosity, how many people would say that they got into this because some adjacently through Ron Paul? God, it's funny, the lights are so bright I can't even see how many of you are raising your hand, but I'm gonna assume it was a lot because I know this crowd. But it's funny because growing up, doing all this political work, right? It was libertarian political work, so it was a little less evil than the Democrats and the Republicans, but it's still politics. It's still fighting over control of a weapon, which is what government is. Government is control of a weapon. And this quote by Ayn Rand, by the way, when I was a kid, my mother used to just say this quote all the time, and I didn't know that it was not her original quote. Like, she'd always be like, oh, morality ends where a gun begins. And I had no idea where it came from. And then in college, I said it to one of my professors, and they're like, thanks, Ayn Rand. And this is what happens sometimes when you haven't read the source material. Your parents just gave it to you. But that was the thing that I thought was really funny, is my parents were working in libertarian politics, and I was working in libertarian politics, and we were working to gain control over a gun. That's basically what the government is. It's a gun. And the Democrats and the Republicans will promise people that they are going to use that gun to point it at the people that you don't like. But the libertarian argument is that if I got control of the gun, I can disarm it. But we haven't managed to accomplish that in 49 years of the Libertarian Party existing. So I found that maybe that's not the most effective form of activism, and maybe it's not the most morally consistent form of activism. And so I realized my family and we've spent a lot of our time and a lot of our money and a lot of our resources and a lot of our social capital and everything else on politics. And what could we have done if we didn't spend that time on politics? Now, here's the thing. In the 70s, there wasn't much you could do in the libertarian spectrum if you weren't going to try to do something political. Like the 70s and 80s, we didn't have Facebook. You couldn't sit there and argue with people on the internet and tell them about Building 7. Like, there just wasn't, that wasn't going to happen. What you could do is you could homeschool your kids, you could read Rothbard, and you could run for political office so that your neighbors would find out what you believe. And you'd write editorials to the local newspaper, because we did a lot of that too. But now we have so many more opportunities to reach out to other people, and one of them is social media. But there's also just the ways in which we can interact with the world and show people something better, and show people what liberty can be about. So I love this quote by Samuel Edward Konkin. It's, "A free society is the only one in which each and every one of us can satisfy his or her subjective values without crushing others' values by violence and coercion." And what I realize is in this fight for political control, in this fight for talking about liberty with all these people, I'm fighting for a free society. That's what I'm trying to do. I want a free society. I think every single person in this room wants a free society. And I think it's a really great concept. And whenever I explain it to people like this, they're like, yeah, of course, I want voluntary society too. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican. When you say it like that, they're like, yeah, of course, I want the way that we interact to be voluntary. It's not what they do, but it's what they say. So then I thought about how do we get a free society if we don't engage in politics? Now, one of the things I find funny is when I talk to fellow libertarian activists, or I watch YouTube videos on libertarianism, a lot of times we'll talk about homeschooling kids. Now, I was peacefully parented and I was homeschooled, and so I love the idea that if we each just, brought a bit of love into the world by raising our kids peacefully, then they would touch lives peacefully, and the whole thing would spread like a virus of peace and love. But, as a peacefully parented, unschooled child, that's not enough. And so when I think of that, I think, what can we do scalably? What can we do to make a freer society? Not just for our own individual lives, which I think is very important, but how can we spread it to other people? And so the point of my talk is, in this fight for a free society, how can you make yourself useful? How can I make myself useful? Is it enough to just say, okay, when I have kids, I'm going to homeschool them, or I'm going to share a bunch of videos about this or that libertarian concept, or I'm going to read some Rothbard. That's all well and good, but is that enough? And so I was thinking about what changes the world. And hey, it'd be wonderful if just one act of kindness changes the world. Yeah, it does, but not at scale. But there are things that change the world, and those things are invention, entrepreneurism, and philanthropy. And I chose these three things because I love the fact that Through invention and innovation, we can do so much to change the quality of lives of ourselves and the people around us. This invention can be an app that makes life simpler. I'm going to get into that in a minute. There's an incredible TED Talk by a man named Hans Rosling about the invention of the washing machine and how it changed his family's life and how it changed the course of human history, and the fact that women could spend their time actually reading and being involved with their children and doing all and working and whatever they wanted to do because they no longer had to hand wash laundry. And it was this incredible video, and it makes such a great point about the fact that invention and innovation can free people so that they have idle time to do whatever they want with. From that, when we invent and we innovate, we are also able to capitalize on that through entrepreneurism, from bringing people these inventions and hopefully making money off of them. And then you can take said money and you can be philanthropic with it. So there can be instances in which you think there's a cause that you care deeply about that doesn't have a particularly strong return on investment from a cash flow perspective, but it's something that you care about, whether it's providing free education or providing, for example, Dale Brown, who is awesome just now. It's the second time I've actually followed him at a conference before. But what he was doing when he was talking about providing security services for free for communities that couldn't afford it, that's amazing. And that's what he can do if he's able to charge for some of it and then able to use that money to be able to be philanthropic and help other people for free. So here is a list of things that have been more effective at freeing people than the Libertarian Party has been in 49 years. Now, I'm going to bitch about the Libertarian Party. I'm actually happy that it's moved the Overton window in terms of the way that people talk about politics and what's acceptable. But these things, let's talk about these things for a second. Waze was invented simply as an app for people to get maps around the city and more effectively, right? To get your directions. But here's the thing about Waze is that though it's not libertarian in the slightest, it doesn't have any intention to be, one of the greatest things that Waze has done is it has deprived the state of revenue. Because there is a little thing in the app because they thought it would be useful to people to be able to say there's a cop nearby. And so when I'm driving and it goes, cop spotted ahead, I can go, ooh, let me ease into the speed limit. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that great? They didn't go out there saying, fuck the state, but guess what? They're depriving the state of revenue. Rideshare apps are another thing, and my mic is falling off my face. Rideshare apps are another thing, because if you think about Lyft wow, this is not staying up. I'm so sorry, guys. Let's see. We got it. We're staying. Awesome. You can still hear me? Good. Rideshare apps are a thing. Lyft and Uber, they just got out there because they're like, hey, some people want to make money by offering rides. Some people want cheaper rides than paying for a taxi that doesn't show up 2 hours after you call it. I'm sorry. I lived in Vegas. That was a thing for a while. But what is another thing that rideshare apps did that wasn't really the intention of why they created them, but what happened? DUI, drunk driving was massively reduced, right? There was this problem in society of people being like, I'm too drunk, I can't afford a cab. The cab's gonna show up a fucking hour after the bar is closed, and I'm gonna drive home instead. Nope, I just call Lyft. Airbnb, removing us from the hotel cartel sort of thing. No more resort fees if you Airbnb. Actually, eBay and Craigslist is something that I really love thinking about, because when I was a kid, if you had a bunch of junk in your closet, you would simply hold a little yard sale and a garage sale. And you would be restricted by the market that is your neighborhood, whether or not people are going to drive down your street and actually find your yard sale and pay for your stuff. And you're also going to be constrained by the economic realities of your neighborhood and whether or not people have money to buy your junk. If you have eBay or Craigslist and you can say, oh, I have this item and I can now advertise it to my greater community on Craigslist or internationally to the world. Maybe there's some CD that nobody in my neighborhood wants, but I know CDs, right? But somebody can buy it on eBay and they'll spend a whole bunch more money on it because to them it's valuable, but to my neighborhood it wasn't. I want to take a minute to talk about Facebook and YouTube, because we we've bitched a lot about Facebook and YouTube. Everyone knows right now there's a lot of censorship on Facebook and YouTube. But the fact is, the libertarian community as it exists today would not exist if it wasn't for Facebook and YouTube. About a third of the people at this conference I met on Facebook before I ever met you in person. And how many people got interested in like some set of the idea of liberty because they watched a YouTube video? Go ahead and raise your hands. Yeah, see, even though I can't see you because there's fucking light right in my face, I know. Like, so many people have said, oh, I watched this one video by this one guy, whose name I don't bother to mention, and they say, I got into liberty this way. And that's the fact is, YouTube and Facebook started out as platforms for people to be able to connect. Facebook might have started out as a dating app, who the hell knows. But the fact is, it came to solve a problem. Hey, people want to upload their videos and share them with their friends. People want to connect with their college classmates. And now they've revolutionized the way that people interact, and maybe they need competitors and they need all sorts of changes to their infrastructure. But the fact is, the libertarian movement as it exists today would not exist without Facebook and YouTube. And I think it's important to acknowledge that because that gives us a blueprint for what we can do next. Then there's also Silk Road and blockchain. And of course, Silk Road was something that was very much invented to be a libertarian solution to a problem, which is I really enjoy buying drugs on the internet instead of buying them in sketchy neighborhoods, in places where I might get robbed or raped. Like, if I want to buy some coke or some weed or some ketamine, the fact that I could do so by buying from a 5-star seller on Silk Road, that was a huge... That's the future libertarians want, let's be honest. And that was actually a huge security thing for me because it made it safer for me to engage. But of course, powers that be don't particularly want that to be a safe thing. And then we have blockchain. The innovation of blockchain has, it's made a bunch of people, probably in this room, a lot richer than they were. And the fact is, there's so much that we can do with blockchain, like besides just transferring currency. And so these, and of course this was totally set up as something to be a liberty solution to a problem. But what I love about this is that most of these were invented just to be a solution to a problem, not a libertarian solution, not trying to free the world, but one of the consequences that they've done something that has impacted freedom, that has made it better. And what I love about all these things is that they recognize incentives. They recognize that all you have to do is provide a good service that people want to use because it solves a problem that they have. They use persuasion, not coercion. I mean, we might hate the monopolization of Facebook, but the fact is I moved over to Facebook because MySpace kind of sucked. And that's how this all works. Like you provide a service that is better than the other service, and people switch over. You don't need coercion. You don't need to threaten people. You just have to show them a better way. In fact, this is what I want to talk about is when I talk about government. Now, I'm at an anarchist conference. We're all thinking, right, just abolish government, get rid of government, fuck government, right? But for me, I don't think that that's enough. It's not about abolition of government to me. It's about obsolescence of government. Because any of us will say, some people will say like, well, if you pressed a button and you could get rid of government right now, you would, right? Everyone would, right? But the problem is that for people who are not libertarians or anarchists, they look at that and they see a void. They see if this thing doesn't exist, if this government doesn't exist, there's gonna be a void and different things are gonna try to fill it. And that's scary to them. And it's honestly reasonable. It's reasonable to be scared of that. It is a terrifying idea that, hey, if I believe that, this subset of the government is the only thing standing in the way to like uneducated children, even though the public education system does not educate children well. The idea is like if they're worried that people will fall through the cracks, if they're worried that anarchy, that chaos will reign, let's not say anarchy, let's say they think chaos will reign, then it's understandable that they don't want that, and they're scared of that, and this and a conference like this scares them. So for me, it's about making government obsolete. It's about providing options that make it so that people don't go, well, but what about this thing? How are we going to live without government doing this thing? So in that, I like to say that utility precedes belief. I actually have this slide in here twice because I think it bears repeating for the people in the back. But utility precedes belief, and the fact is, I'd love it if we could all go online and say, hey, have you heard of the non-aggression principle? I'd love to convert you to the non-aggression principle. And maybe some people are like that. Maybe some people in this room heard about the non-aggression principle from an Anarchist episode and went, yeah, I'm all in. Now I'm going to apply that to my entire life, and now I'm an anarchist. Most people don't operate like that. But lots of people operate by, hey, this is useful to me. Hey, I'm going to adopt that thing. And I find that that is really the best way to show people, hey, these things can be useful to you, and then it doesn't even matter if you believe in it. It doesn't matter if you believe in the larger concept. You find something that is useful to you. And then slowly we can do that with everything that government currently covers. This is why my mantra is private solutions to public problems. There are lots and lots of public problems out there, and people are constantly saying, what about, what about, what about? We have to deal with this public problem. We have to deal with this public problem. And the fact is, we as anarchists should be focusing on finding the private solutions to those problems so that people can switch, they can get off the Titanic and onto a better boat. So this is all about showing people a better way. By the way, this picture is of Tatiana Moroz. This was taken at Anarchapulco in 2017, yes. Actually, almost every photo that I have been showing you as the background of these has been a photo I've taken here at Anarchapulco or at other Liberty-themed conferences. But anyway, getting to this, when you go, hey, well, what should we do? Like, how would we solve this private solutions to public problems? The easiest thing to do is think about what objections you hear to liberty every day, because somebody had a fight with their family at Thanksgiving, and the family member said, well, what about? If you had anarchy, what about this? What about that? In fact, what's the most common thing that we love to joke about is, what about the roads? Well, I'd just like to let you know, guys, Domino's Pizza has it covered. So Domino's Pizza, if you go to pavingforpizza.com, you can nominate neighborhoods in the US in which Domino's will literally come and fill potholes. And they do so for free. They pay the money to have it filled, and I promise you, it costs less for them to fill it than the government to fill it. And they do it. They say, okay, we're going to spend $5,000 here. We're going to fix all the potholes in Oakland, California, or wherever. And then they just get a bunch of free media from it. It's really awesome. A bunch of media organizations go, holy shit, Domino's Pizza is fixing potholes. And then a bunch of people go, I'm going to try Domino's Pizza. I heard it sucks, but I'm going to try it anyway. That's like, isn't that amazing? Like, that's a really cool strategy. And we could do that with so many things. There's so many like problems, not just roads, but there's so many problems. Could you imagine if you went and you actually talked to a company like Amazon or a company like Safeway or you know, grocery stores or whatever, and you said, hey, would you donate money towards helping poor people get food so that they don't have to be on food stamps? These are the kinds of things that we could help people do through philanthropy and through entrepreneurism by finding financially profitable situations in which we can just provide something that's more effective than government. Again, I say utility precedes belief. I've got a bunch of friends who are in Antifa who think that the Domino's Pizza thing is actually pretty cool. It's kind of amazing when they're applauding a corporation, I gotta say. But this is your opportunity to find private solutions to public problems. And it comes down to, what problems do you want to solve? One of my favorite things that I like to say, it was a quote that I got somewhere and love to pass off as my own, but this is a quote because I don't remember the original author of the quote. It said, when you're talking to children, do not ask a child what they want to be when they grow up. Ask them what problems they want to solve, because it changes the way they think about the world. It changes the way they think about opportunity. And I love that, because right here, okay, like we're all children of somebody. What problems do you want to solve in the world? What things do you care about? Maybe you care about the state of education. And the thing is, like, we all care about the state of education and we all want to do better for our own children, but how can we help those who are afraid that they can't homeschool, that they don't have the time? Or, for example, if you care about climate, you care about the earth, right? There's a Dutch teenager named Boyan Slat who is actually trying to clean up the oceans because he identifies that having plastic in our oceans is a problem. And so he worked on a solution. 7 years of developing a technology. He's now 25 years old. He was 18 when he started this project. And he is able to now, like, he's created this thing that nets up plastic that's in the ocean. So he didn't go to the UN and bitch about how they're ruining his childhood. He just said, let's solve a problem. Let's solve a problem. And that is such an incredible thing to see. You see things like, oh, I gotta press that way. Oh, fuck, sorry, back. That'll come. But how, so this is a Wired article about how Khan Academy is changing the rules of education. And I love this because, like, Khan Academy is just some guy who's like, I just want to, like, make little videos where people can be as interested in this particular math problem or science problem as I am. And there are now public school teachers who are using Khan Academy to help their students learn better. Now, that's not quite the solution I want, but it's a step forward. We have so many ways to help people educate their children if they don't feel that they have this opportunity to homeschool or unschool because they don't have the time or they have to work 2 jobs or whatever. Now, sometimes working in politics makes you want to smoke a lot of pot. My partner and I, so Judd Weiss, he actually photographed a number of Anarchapulcos. And actually, funny story, in 2016, a man named John McAfee decided to run for president as a libertarian. He did not get the nomination, but he chose my boyfriend Judd Weiss as his VP running mate. So that was really fun to be on the campaign trail with John McAfee, right? You know, it's hard to applaud a politician, but I'll applaud him. But we saw issues in the cannabis industry in California, and we have been working to try to change the way that people perceive cannabis and the way that cannabis is consumed. So we started a company 2 years ago, and like this year is going to be a make or break. It's been a really fun time working on cannabis, especially because now I get to just tell people I sell drugs, and it's really fun. But that's the thing, is you can find a problem within an industry that you care about or a problem within the public spectrum that you care about, and you can say, how can I solve this issue? Now, stop trying to blow shit up. It's time to build. Now, here's the thing. Not every single person in this room is cut out to be an entrepreneur. Like, it's just not going to happen. But many of you are cut out to work for an entrepreneur or to support an entrepreneur. Some of you have money. You could fund an entrepreneur. The fact is, we have all these opportunities to help create these solutions within our community. And you can help even if you're not the one who says, okay, I'm ready to start a business. But I really want to see people do more of this, building stuff. I mean, you can leave this conference having learned lots about all sorts of subjects, and you can go online and you can say, hey, can I tell you about Building 7? Or you could actually say, I just learned about private security things from Dale Brown. Or I'm interested in this Boyan Slat kid and how he wants to solve climate change in this way. There are so many ways to approach these problems and to talk to people about them. I'm almost done my slides. I'm sorry, Benny. I'm out of time. But the question is, who is going to let me? It's who is going to stop me. The government will try, but just get ahead of them. Just be ahead of them. Make them obsolete. I love this picture. It's actually taken at some like Burning Man rave, but I only ask to be free. The butterflies are free. If you are looking for a sign, this is it. Like, this is the thing. What do you want to do? Go fucking do it. My name is Avens. Thank you so much for all of your time.